Well, welcome back to the channel, homesteaders. Today we're going to be talking about tomatoes, or as we call them here in the South, good old tomatoes. We're going to talk about lighting, soil, seed starting, things you need to know before you pick the variety of tomato that you want to enjoy. Whether you want a slicer, a canner, we're going to go through all of that. We're going to go through root progression. We're going to look at some possible disease preventative things, some companion planting. Stick around. You ain't going to want to miss this. We're going to start off talking about some definitions that I think are very important for you to know about when you are picking the variety or type of tomato that you want to grow. Heirloom seeds. I love heirloom seeds. I try to stick with heirloom seeds with most of the vegetables that I grow. I grow everything basically from seed. It is much cheaper, and I find it more fulfilling for me personally to do so. So we will talk about seeding next. But let's talk about determinate versus an indeterminate plant. The definitions. Indeterminate plant means that as long as your tomato is happy tomato, it will continue to produce until the first frost. Okay? Basically limitless, or depending on you, the gardener, or the area. A determinate type of tomato or vegetable means that it's genetically programmed to be harvested at a certain day and is going to produce a certain yield. Now that's fine if you're wanting to produce this many pounds of tomatoes on this 3 or 4 date range. Where it really becomes important is to feed the masses, or for the big time farmers who fill our grocery stores. It just isn't economical to pick tomatoes on a daily basis. They can get the big farming equipment, the big machines out on these days, and they can harvest, and they can come back 3 days later, harvest again, and they're done, okay? That's really the reason for producing those determinate species or types, in my opinion. So those are very important for you to know before you even pick your plants out, or before you pick your seeds. You'll want to know determinate or indeterminate. I stick with mainly indeterminate. There are some determinate tomatoes that I'm planting, especially this year, because I like the taste and I can't get them any other way. So you need to know that to figure out the type that you're going to buy. Now you need to figure out the variety. Okay? Guys, if you're finding any of this information helpful or useful at all, we'd really love you to subscribe and like our channel. We want you on board. Thanks. So we need to know what you want to do with your tomatoes. Do you like slicers? Do you love them on a hamburger or a sandwich? Or I've eaten just tomato sandwiches. Honestly, I love a big, thick, juicy slice of tomato with mayo and bread, salt and pepper. But we also can tomatoes here. So are you canning tomatoes for soups, stews? Are you making sauces? Are you making salsa, which we do make here as well from our garden? Oh, it's yummy. So you really need to know whether you're wanting a slicer, you're wanting the sauce, because there are different tomatoes. They're all good, but there are some better tomatoes for each of those choices. I personally like the beefsteak tomato as a slicer. I have some Better Boys and some Early Girl hybrids, and I have some Delicious, which is a variety that you'll love also because it's delicious. The Delicious variety of tomato held the world record for the largest tomato for, I want to say like 29 years, coming in close to 8 pounds. It's actually like 7 3/4 pound tomato, if you can imagine one. For sauces, we like to use Romas. Or a San Marzano is a really good sauce. A lot of Italian recipes call for that type of sauce. A lot of pizzas are made with San Marzano. But for variety, you need to know indeterminate, determinate, what taste, what are you looking for? I like a little bit of everything, so I'll plant a little bit of all of it. I'm not a big cherry tomato fan, but my wife loves them. We've planted some. I have some white cherry tomatoes, some black cherry tomatoes, supposed to have a smoky flavor. I'm looking forward to trying those. But I'm not a big cherry tomato fan. So let's talk about planting from seed. So planting from seed is so much more economical. It's just, and it's fun. It's fun. I think where people mess up planting their tomato seeds and they just go buy the tomato plants every year, which are going crazy high. The prices are at your big box stores for tomatoes are ridiculous. I said that. But you can't, I see people poking their finger in their soil to make a hole and putting the seed in and then covering it up. And the smaller the seed, the less depth it needs to be planted at. Tomato seeds are tiny. They almost need to be planted on the top of the soil, on loose soil, and watered in, okay? I'm looking at my tomatoes now, I had an almost 100% success rate on my seeds coming up, 2 per container. But that's me. So maybe it's where I'm at, maybe it's the planting the seed trick. I use coconut coir, I use peat moss, and a little vermiculite. I mix my own, and that's basically what these Jiffy starter soils, what they use as well. The vermiculite will help hold the moisture in, and that's what I use. I have some mixed here that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. So when you're planting those seeds, very shallow, guys, very shallow, like 1/8 inch. I get a sifter and actually sift my soil, over my seeds. Now, when you're planting, you want to make sure that your soil is already moistened, pre-moistened, okay? You should be able to get your soil and squeeze a ball into your fist and it remain that way. You shouldn't be dripping out, but it needs to be moist. And tomatoes will come up fast. If it's the right time, if there's plenty of sunlight and warmth, they will sometimes be already up in 3 to 4 days, 5 days max, okay? Make sure that they get plenty of sun. Tomatoes love sun. Your seedlings and wherever you're gonna plant them. You want to acclimate them if you're doing your seeding inside a greenhouse like I have here. You really don't have to, but if you're doing them in your home, you'll want to acclimate them when it gets closer to time to plant them. Put them out in a shady spot for 4, 5, 6 hours of the day. Put them in a little bit of sun the next couple days. This is called hardening off of your seedlings. You're getting them acclimated to the climate. Okay, so I use the red Solo cups for my seed starters. The reason I do that is I can use them over and over 2 or 3 years, as long as I take care of them. They're very cheap. And for the method that I use, they're perfect. So I know that there's some folks out there, I mean, they do their seeds different. I'm not saying my way is right and everybody else is wrong. I'm just gonna tell you what works for me, okay? I've seen the 2-cup method. I've seen several different methods. The reason that I do them the way I'm doing them, you'll understand in just a moment. So I use a soldering iron and I put, 4 or 5 holes directly into the bottom. Then I go out here and I'll put about 4 holes towards the bottom into the sides of the cup. Okay, this is because I water mine from the bottom, okay? So I'm gonna fill this cup originally to about here. You can see that, about little over a quarter full of my seed starting soil that I make. I'm gonna plant my seed and I'm gonna water it till it comes up. When we get the first 2 true leaves, I use an X-Acto knife, but I'm gonna take the bottom first seedling leaves off. I'm gonna add more soil to the cup to bring it up to about here. What this method does is all along the stem of a tomato, roots will form. The more roots, The sturdier the base, the better the fruit, okay? The other method that I've seen people use, the 2-cup method, the idea is to not limit the root growth, but it will start coming out of these holes, okay? Well, I've done that, and when I've planted my tomato, when I pull them out of here, I just tear off half those roots anyway, right? And I want to make sure that I have more roots going higher up to sturdy, make that plant sturdier. So, once we get a plant past this level, once again, I will take off the bottom leaves, which is now the 3rd and 4th leaf, and I will top this off with soil so that when I'm ready to plant this tomato, it'll come out of the cup and it will be full of roots. When I plant that tomato, I'm going to cover up another couple inches of the bare stem, either through hilling it or burying it a little deeper. I want all those roots I can get. Let me show you a plant here at various stages. These 2 tomatoes were planted at the same time. But for sake of this video, this one, I hurried it up through topping it off with the root growth. This one is at the 2nd stage. After today, I'll go ahead and top all of these off. Let me show you one that I planted that I left at the 1st stage. You can see the difference. This one, still at the 1st stage, okay? Now, if I wouldn't do this, you see how that's just wobbling around and going? If I didn't add more soil to this stem, then it's not very, doesn't matter how many roots you grow at the bottom, it's not going to be sturdy like this one, okay? Notice the difference in the main stem. You want that as thick as you can get it, okay? I have a video on beefsteak tomatoes that I put out a couple years ago that goes more into pruning tomatoes and why you would do so. Talks about the tomato suckers and all this. We'll put a link to that video down below. We're not going to go into pruning today. Let's talk about some of the needs for all plants, including tomatoes. Potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen, calcium, magnesium. Some people think Epsom salt's a cure for everything. It has magnesium. But a lot of the problems like blossom end rot, or where you get the tomato will form, but it turns black at the end, that is a calcium deficiency, but it's not necessarily caused by there not being calcium in the soil or the right amount. Now you can add calcium, magnesium, nitrogen, you can add all of these things you can amend your soil with. A lot of the times when it's a calcium problem, it's because you're not watering enough. If a plant is not getting watered regularly, it can't uptake calcium. It will not be able to bring it into the plant. So most of the time it's a watering issue, okay? I will tell you that tomatoes love nitrogen. But what loves the nitrogen the most are these leaves. High nitrogen is good, but you are going to have to prune your plants more and understand that the more nitrogen, the more foliage. You want to make sure that that wind is able to come through your plants. You want to keep the bottom area of your plant clean. Don't let branches hang down and stay on the soil. That's going to introduce funguses and other insects. It's going to cause a problem. Keep it clean, keep the air flowing through, which brings me to the next point of tomatoes are self-fertile. So they don't necessarily need pollination. But what they do need to pollinate themselves is vibration through insects or bees, or the wind coming through the plants, or you can manually provide that yourself. I've done it years ago. I actually overdone it. I turned bigger type tomato basically into a cherry tomato because it had hundreds of tomatoes all over it because I pollinated every bloom. I wouldn't recommend that. But I use an electric toothbrush and just touched each bloom. So they're self-fertile. You can do that. As your indeterminate varieties get on into the summer and you see that you're producing less, you can top off your tomato plants, and that will force them to go into bloom again. Okay? Just a little tip for you there. They love a slightly acidic soil. You can increase or decrease the acidity of your soil by using sulfur or lime. That's just one of the ways that you can go. You can buy a tester at your local garden supply for your soil. They're under $15. You may be able to pick them up there. I'll put a link down below. I have one that I picked up on Amazon. So tomatoes, low calories, high vitamins, high in vitamin C, high in potassium, antioxidants, lycopene, protects your heart, protects against certain cancers. So it is a tremendous plant to grow. It is such enjoyment to be able to go out and pick your own vegetables, have your own salad, be able to make your canning and your sauces and all those things. So tomatoes are a real joy. And you just have to remember that they need that sunlight. You got to pay attention to where you're planting, what type you're planting, which we talked about those definitions, what you're looking for in a variety, and then have fun with it, guys. That's what it's about. It's about good, clean eating, a little more self-sufficient, and what a great stress reliever a garden is. So keep enjoying, keep getting outdoors because it's good for you. We'll see you soon.